Hello everyone. Welcome back to the YouTube channel Ghost Stories by Uncle Ba Dewey. I hope you enjoy today's thrilling ghost story. Dewey thanks everyone very much. Without further ado, let's dive into the first story of the day. This story was shared by a female friend who said it happened during her final year of high school, which is the 12th grade. It's also a valuable lesson for anyone venturing into deserted places and for those who might run away after a breakup, causing others to search for them. Despite being in high school, she lived in a shared dorm with 3 other friends. Not only did she hang out with her roommates, but also with 3 friends from the neighboring room in the same dormitory. The 6 of them were very close, always meeting up to go out for drinks, meals, and study sessions together. Everything was going smoothly until one day, Tran, a member of the group, had a fight with her boyfriend and suddenly disappeared, causing everyone in the room to worry. After waiting for a long time without seeing Tran return, everyone grew anxious, fearing she might do something reckless. The group consisted mostly of girls, with only 2 boys. They waited until late at night for Tran, but she didn't come back. Finally, they decided to split into 2 groups. One group of 2 people, a boy and a girl, went in 2 directions to search, while the remaining 2 girls stayed in the room in case Tran returned. This way, they could inform the others to stop searching. One group went to the school and visited the usual hangouts to see if Tran was there. Meanwhile, the other group, which included the narrator and another boy, decided to go to the stream. The stream was a familiar spot for the group, where they often went swimming together during hot weather. They frequented the place so often that it was a natural choice to check there, as the other places had already been searched. They feared Tran might have gone there out of sadness, to do something foolish, so they headed to the stream without hesitation. Despite the potential danger, their sole focus was on finding Tran, not feeling scared at all. However, getting to the stream wasn't easy, as they had to cross a cemetery. This cemetery is like an ancient one, full of old tombs. After passing through it, we had to cross a cashew garden where many cashew trees were planted. Then we reached a few small rice fields. After the rice fields, there was another cashew garden, and finally, we arrived at the stream. We were in a hurry, so we didn't bring any lights. It was quite late, but luckily the night was bright because of the moonlight, so we just kept walking without thinking much. On the way to the stream, before reaching the cemetery, there was a large tree, like an ancient tree, but we didn't know what kind it was. Even after all these years, the tree still stands there. At that time, the path was so familiar that we weren't afraid of the big tree with its large canopy. We chatted to keep each other company until we reached the stream. Once there, we split up to search among the rocks and crevices for a python, but we found nothing. The area was dense with trees, making it difficult to call out. After a while, we gave up and decided to head back, convinced the python wasn't hiding there. As we were walking back, a friend in the room called to say the python had returned to the room, which was a relief. We then leisurely made our way back, no longer in a rush. However, to get out of the stream area, we had to cross a cashew garden, some rice fields, and the cemetery again. But as soon as we reached the cashew garden, I slipped and twisted my ankle. I couldn't walk anymore, so my friend Tang offered to carry me on his back. We continued chatting as he carried me, but as we approached the cemetery, we both noticed an old man in a white shirt walking in the opposite direction. I remembered the moon was bright that night, but the man appeared blurry, though I could clearly see his face. I could only make out his shirt and upper body. His arms and legs were indistinct, almost invisible. Before seeing him, we were talking loudly to ease the tension, but the sight of the man silenced us. We passed by him, and he turned to smile at us. A few meters away, I looked back and saw him still smiling at me. As they reached the part of the cemetery where the big tree stood, they looked back once more but couldn't see the old man anywhere. After leaving the cemetery, Tang asked, "Why was that old man heading towards the stream? There's no house there." It was then that they both seemed to realize something was off. Suddenly, Tang's legs gave out beneath him, and he couldn't carry his friend anymore. Tang was very scared, and they struggled to make their way back to the porch of their boarding house, collapsing there, gasping for breath as if they had never breathed before. The chill ran down their spines ever since they encountered that man. When their friends saw them trembling, they asked what had happened, but neither could answer. After a while, they calmed down and remembered it was a full moon night and they had crossed the stream at exactly midnight. At that point, they couldn't say anything more, just praying for protection. Everyone then went to wash up and sleep. The next day, Tang was bedridden with a fever, and the other friends suffered from low calcium levels, fainting repeatedly. The climax came that day when the friend fainted again. After regaining consciousness, they washed up and ate with everyone, but didn't speak much, just complained about feeling tired. They went back to bed, slept for about 15 minutes, and woke up still feeling exhausted, complaining of stomach and back pain. They said it felt like someone had thrown them into a thorny pit, and they struggled to climb out, which left them hungry and in pain. The others in the room were puzzled by this behavior. Later, when things settled down, they told the friend that they had already eaten and washed up, yet kept complaining of hunger. This period was marked by frequent fainting due to low calcium, culminating in a midday fainting spell where their body became rigid, as if possessed. The friend lay unconscious on the bed, making the others too afraid to leave the room. After a while, the friend woke up and asked if they wanted to go to the stream. The others were surprised and asked if they were well enough to go, worried about who would carry them back if something happened. But the friend ignored their concerns and kept urging them to go to the stream, staring out the window and insisting someone was inviting them to bathe there. The whole group was scared and didn't understand what you were saying. They asked, "Who are you talking about inviting you to bathe in the stream? There's no one outside the window." You pointed outside and said, "There, that old man in black with a cane. He's been waiting for me since morning, inviting me to bathe in the stream. So I invited you guys. Are you coming?" Before they could answer, you got out of bed in a trance-like state, as if you were sleepwalking during the day, and walked straight out the door. Your friends pulled you back, and you fainted. After a while, when you woke up, they told you what happened, and you were shocked because you didn't know what was going on. At that point, everyone in the room felt something was wrong. So they suggested you arrange for your family to take you home for a while. They said, "You can't stay here like this. You won't be able to study. If we go to class and leave you alone, we won't feel at ease. Call your family." But considering it was close to the semester exams, you couldn't just go home and skip school. Finally, the group decided to take you to class temporarily, just to sit there because they didn't dare leave you alone in the room anymore. When your friends took you to school, there was a classmate named Kui, whose family had been fortune tellers and spirit warders for 2 generations. He was somewhat influenced by his family, so when he saw you, he said, "Someone is following you, and they aren't kind. They want to take you away." At first, you thought he was just teasing you because of your recent bad luck. But when you asked him seriously, he replied, "Do you think I'm joking?" He also advised you to ask your parents to buy you a sliding phone. Not knowing what a sliding phone was, you kept asking him, "What's a sliding phone?" Eventually, Kui explained that he meant a coffin. He added that you had a destiny with water, so spirits found you suitable and wanted to lure you to replace them. He said, "Wait for me to finish class, and I'll ask my grandfather to make some protective charms for you to place in your room and on the doorframe. Let's see if they still try to take you away." After Kui gave you some charms and instructed you on how to perform some rituals in your room, the frequency of your fainting decreased and your mental state improved. However, there was still one time when you were sleeping and saw the person again. The man didn't stand right at the main door. Instead, he stood outside by the window. At this point, if you noticed, he didn't enter the house. He just looked at the place where you sleep and then turned away without doing anything else. After that, Kui gave you a charm to keep on you for peace and protection, ensuring no one dared to approach you anymore. Ever since that time, your life returned to normal. Whether it was due to the charm given by your grandfather, Kui, or some other fate that allowed you to overcome this ordeal, remains unknown. Whenever your group of friends gathers and brings up this story, everyone gets chills. Now let's move to story 2, The Crime of Grandmother. The second story is about a death that haunted the family and those who witnessed it. The female narrator recounts that this incident happened recently, in 2018. Her household consisted of her parents, 2 siblings, and her grandmother. Everything had been normal until one afternoon while the family was having dinner. Suddenly, her grandmother seemed as if she was choking on fish bones. She started crying and coughing violently before suddenly gasping and passing away. Witnessing this, her father quickly rushed her grandmother to the hospital. Her father drove the motorcycle with her grandmother seated in the middle and her mother holding her from the back. The road to the hospital was very bumpy, with many potholes, causing the ride to be rough. Upon reaching the doctor, they were advised to take her home for a funeral, as she had suffered a stroke and couldn't be saved. The family was deeply saddened as they prepared for the funeral. After purchasing a coffin and making all necessary arrangements, the monks arrived. Upon their arrival, they calculated the auspicious days but found none suitable for the burial. Thus, they were compelled to keep the grandmother's body for 7 days before burial. Fortunately, the grandmother died suddenly, not after a prolonged illness, so her body didn't smell for the first 3 days. However, by the 4th day, the odor became overwhelming. The parents had to use air fresheners around the coffin to mask the smell, but it persisted. As the funeral lasted 7 days, the number of visitors dwindled after the initial days. By the 5th day, the odor from the coffin became unbearable, filling the entire house, despite attempts to cover it with air fresheners. No matter how big the room was, it couldn't get rid of that smell, to the point that you had to ask to sleep at the neighbor's house that night. It was either Thursday or Friday night. Your mother was sitting with a small table, burning paper money for your grandmother. The table was placed high, so your mother's ear was level with it as she sat on the floor. While burning the paper money, she heard a knocking sound coming from the table. At first, she thought it was just the wood making noises. However, the sound grew louder, startling her, and she rushed inside to tell your father. He suggested she might have misheard, as there couldn't possibly be any sound coming from the table. Surely, your grandmother wasn't coming back to life. That night, the family eventually went to sleep, and finally, the day of the burial arrived on Saturday. The monk had set the burial time for exactly midnight. Many people stayed awake to accompany your grandmother on her final journey. The coffin bearers, a team of 6, attempted to lift the coffin at the appointed time, but strangely, it was as heavy as several hundred kilograms. Even with 2 young men from the neighborhood joining in, they couldn't lift it. Struggling to move it, they eventually dropped it to the ground. The monk present performed some rituals, explaining that your grandmother's spirit was not ready to leave, which was why the coffin was so heavy. Spirits had gathered in the house due to the extended time the coffin remained there. The monk continued his rituals, and everyone watched in fear, as the situation seemed unresolved. He admitted defeat, saying too many spirits were clinging to the coffin. He instructed everyone to bring the coffin back into the house, as the burial time had passed. Your grandmother's coffin was kept in the house for another day. From that point, strange occurrences began to happen. For instance, the next morning at 10 a.m., when your mother returned from the market, she passed by the coffin, which was still placed at the front of the house. No more guests were around, as the funeral was over. As she walked by, she heard the monk's voice again. Hearing the repeated knocking sounds from your grandmother's coffin, your mother, instead of feeling scared, had grown accustomed to it. During the 7 days of the funeral, your mother heard the knocking every day. Curious, she leaned in closer to the coffin and asked, "Mom, do you want something for me?" Suddenly, your father interjected, "Hey, come down here and make a chicken for me to eat. What are you doing up there talking nonsense?" Everyone in the house was unfazed, as they had become used to such occurrences. Your mother proceeded to the kitchen to prepare the chicken, while the coffin remained at the front of the house, as usual. However, when your mother cut the chicken's neck, she noticed something odd. There was no blood. Normally, cutting a chicken would cause blood to spurt out, but this time there wasn't a single drop. Despite finding it strange, she continued to pluck and chop the chicken, only to discover its meat was pale and purplish, as if all the blood had been drained. Your father remarked, "How could you buy such a chicken?" But your mother insisted it was healthy when she bought it. After dinner, Your mother prepared a meal to offer in front of the coffin. As they approached, the family was shocked to find a pool of chicken blood under the coffin, still dripping onto the floor. Horrified, your mother quickly called the priest who had conducted the burial. Upon arrival, he instructed the family to gather and pray for your grandmother's spirit until midnight, and that she could only be buried at 6 a.m. the next morning. The priest warned that the house was filled with heavy negative energy, and spirits were gathering around the coffin, consuming half of your grandmother's body. He urged the family to pray from 10 p.m. onwards. Around 11 p.m., while praying, they heard loud banging from inside the coffin. The priest advised everyone to remain calm, to arrange chairs around the coffin, and to continue praying until morning. At 6 a.m., as planned, your grandmother was finally laid to rest. Reflecting on the night, the family remembered how they had to keep incense and candles burning throughout the night while kneeling in prayer. After the burial, the pallbearers shared with the family that carrying the coffin was unlike any experience they had ever had. The previous time when Grandma's coffin was carried, it felt as if it wasn't being carried at all because it was so light, as if it was empty without a body inside. However, your family hasn't found peace since burying her. After the burial, strange occurrences continued to happen. You mentioned that after taking Grandma out to the backyard for burial, from that day on, everyone in your house heard screams coming from her grave, echoing into the house. These sounds were absent during the day, but were heard every night by all family members, and they were terrifying. Living with these screams and fear continuously for a month severely affected everyone's health because no one dared to eat or sleep. Once the family couldn't take it anymore, they decided to seek the help of the priest who had previously buried Grandma. When the priest came to your house, he criticized your parents for not removing Grandma's bed. Before she passed away, Grandma slept on that bed, which now had a lot of negative energy. The priest advised to burn or get rid of it and anything related to Grandma, because these items carried a lot of negative energy. Generally, the priest's advice was typical since items belonging to the deceased should be discarded or burned unless they hold precious memories. However, when the priest asked if Grandma had committed any evil deeds during her life, it shocked the family. He said many spirits were following Grandma, seeking revenge. This frightened everyone, and your father was devastated hearing this. He recounted a disturbing story to the priest and the family. He revealed that Grandma had a conflict with a sister-in-law in the family. During this dispute, Grandma developed a plan to mix a miscarriage-inducing drug into a bowl of soup intended for her sister-in-law, who was pregnant. Grandma's intention was only to cause a miscarriage, not to harm her sister-in-law's life. Unfortunately, after consuming the soup, the sister-in-law, who was carrying twins, suffered a miscarriage. The drug's effects were so severe that she couldn't withstand them and eventually died along with the unborn twins. The 2 children in the womb were the consequence of the crime committed by your grandmother. On that day, it was a family matter, so no one in your grandmother's house reported it to the authorities until everything was revealed. Outsiders only knew that your grandmother's sister-in-law had a miscarriage and lost a lot of blood, which she couldn't survive. The true cause was that your grandmother poisoned the soup, leading to the sister-in-law's miscarriage and the loss of 3 lives. This crime remained a secret within the family for decades, witnessed by your father, who, though young at the time, was aware enough to understand right from wrong. After the sister-in-law and her children were buried behind your grandmother's house, your father continuously heard cries from their graves. This haunting persisted for years, even into his adulthood. However, after your grandmother passed away, instead of being haunted by the sister-in-law and her children, your family began to hear screams from your grandmother's grave. Upon discovering his mother's crime, a spiritual advisor told your father to set up altars to honor the sister-in-law and her children, which had been done since their deaths decades ago. The advisor mentioned that only through offerings and repentance might the spirits forgive your grandmother, potentially ending the screams. Despite setting up altars and repeatedly apologizing, your father continued to hear cries from your grandmother's grave, suggesting the spirits hadn't forgiven her. Later, The advisor explained that the screams were your grandmother's punishment, mixed with the satisfied laughter of the sister-in-law and her children. For a year after your grandmother's death, your family found no peace until the altars were properly established and sincere prayers were offered. By the end of that year, the disturbances ceased, but the events lingered until 2019. Lan's father had a terrifying dream that night. While he was sleeping, he dreamt of a strange vision. In the dream, he saw a woman, but only from the waist down. Her upper body was missing, as if it had been cut off by a machine, not blurred. Seeing such a bizarre figure, Lan's father ran frantically in the dream. But the woman chased him, saying, "Don't you recognize your mother? Why are you so cruel, letting them eat my flesh? They've devoured half of me. How will I reincarnate whole? Drive them away." Her words repeated several times, terrifying him. Upon waking, he and Lan's mother quickly sought protection by getting a charm. That day, he knelt at his mother's altar, praying sincerely for her spirit not to disturb the family anymore, as he was both frightened and saddened. After finishing his prayers, he placed the incense stick in the burner, which suddenly caught fire, engulfing the entire altar and the mourning cloths left there. This happened before the mourning period for his mother had ended. Witnessing this, Lan's father was extremely shaken. After extinguishing the fire, he knelt again, pleading with his mother's spirit. He then sought out the monk who had performed the funeral rites, but unfortunately, the monk had retired and refused to help, believing the family's karma was too heavy. Strange occurrences continued to happen at their home for some time, yet Lan's parents did not seek help from other spiritual leaders. Eventually, Lan's father fell ill, and though the details were not shared, by early 2021, after being bedridden like a vegetative state, he passed away. Since his passing, the family has experienced no more disturbances, and even the grandmother's spirit has ceased to appear. This concludes the haunting tale. Remember to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to leave a comment below. Let's look forward to more exciting stories in the future. Goodbye, everyone. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the YouTube channel of Dewey's Ghost Stories. I hope you have a thrilling time listening to the stories. Before diving into the ghost story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Your support means a lot to Dewey. Thank you very much. Now, let's get started with today's story. This story is recounted by a woman from Dalat. She mentioned that she had never encountered ghosts before, but her intuitions, especially her dreams, often came true. Particularly, during one instance in 2017, she and her husband rented a house in Dalat. Her strange dreams frequently occurred in this house. At that time, it was the end of 2017, and she and her now ex-husband decided to move from Saigon to Dalat to start a new life. They were in a rush due to the approaching Tet holiday and asked a real estate agent to quickly find them a house in Dalat. With little time to spare, they planned to move in as soon as the agent found a suitable place. Finally, the agent found them a house with 3 floors, renting for 15 million VNE per month. Without hesitation, they transferred the deposit and moved in immediately due to the urgency of the situation. Like many renters pressed for time, they didn't have the opportunity to properly inspect the house. After paying the deposit, they looked back at the photos the agent had sent them of the house. They realized it appeared gloomy and dark, reminiscent of haunted houses in Dalat, especially with 2 pine trees in front. On both sides stood 2 pine trees, but one had already died, its leaves withered and looking quite eerie. It seemed like a slight push would topple it. However, there was nothing to be done since the deposit had already been paid, and we were in a rush, so we decided on this house despite any fears. That evening, my husband and I moved our belongings from Saigon to the house. We arrived at around 10:30 p.m. As soon as we stepped into the living room, a cold chill enveloped me, making me shiver. My husband and the landlord suggested it was just the unfamiliar Dalat weather, but I knew this cold was different, a chill that seemed to seep from my spine. That night, we finalized the rental agreement. Despite the cold, we decided to stay. After some time, my husband began experiencing strange sensations whenever he went upstairs to turn on the water heater. It felt like a cold current running down his spine, persisting until he returned downstairs. In the second month, we got a golden retriever puppy. Although healthy at first, it soon fell ill, possibly from eating something bad. Thankfully, my husband took it to the vet multiple times, and it recovered. We then tied it up in the backyard to prevent it from wandering. However, whenever my husband went to the backyard, the dog would bark and howl incessantly, as if sensing something. At night, I noticed that when I lay in bed with my eyes on my phone, I could see a shadow standing at the bedroom door, even though it was closed. Each time I saw it, the dog would bark more. This continued until the landlord unexpectedly reclaimed the house for a homestay business. We agreed to move out without any issues. On moving day, a friend named Ton helped us. He was sensitive to spirits and noticed the house's unusual coldness, especially when he went upstairs. That night, he dreamed of a woman in black pajamas with long hair standing on the staircase. She seemed calm and gentle, not threatening. Later, he shared this with us, and we realized the house was indeed haunted. Reflecting on it, we felt sorry for scolding the dog for barking at spirits. Despite our efforts to appease the spirits with offerings on full moon days, my husband was often disturbed by them, especially when he went upstairs or outside to check the vehicles. Whenever I was around, the presence would disappear, which was why he often called me to stay close. After moving to a new house, she found an old photo of the previous house, taken by the person who rented it to her. Upon viewing it, she noticed something peculiar about the iron gate painted black. On closer inspection, it seemed to her as if there were many faces pressed against the gate, which looked quite eerie. Although she wasn't sure if any spirits followed her to the new house, she no longer felt chills or heard dogs barking. However, since having a child, she began experiencing strange dreams in the new house. In August 2018, she moved to the new place, which was quite old and had leaking roofs and peeling walls due to dampness. On the day of moving, her husband and a friend helped clean the house, which had been unexpectedly reclaimed by the previous owner, forcing them to find a new place quickly within a month. Fortunately, the new house was close to the old one, making it easier to move their belongings. According to her, the rented houses in Dalat seemed haphazardly constructed without proper plans, as if built in sections depending on budget. Despite appearing like a typical one-story house, her room lacked a bathroom, but the kitchen had one nearby. To access the storage room, one had to descend several steps due to the sloped terrain, making it appear quite dark. The house had glass doors, offering a view of the forest behind, which was unsettling, prompting her to ask her husband to buy curtains. Initially, they didn't plan any rituals since they intended to stay only a few months while working on a homestay project elsewhere. In contrast, she had performed rituals at the previous house, expecting a long-term stay, but the owner unexpectedly took it back. During the early days in the new house, she didn't realize she was pregnant. One evening, feeling exhausted, she slept until 6 p.m. while her husband was outside playing with his cars. She believed the house had no spiritual issues since her husband hadn't experienced anything. While sleeping, she fell into a dream, yet felt very awake, perceiving herself as awake and going to the toilet. As she reached to open the door, someone pulled her hand back. Turning around, she saw an elderly woman with a normal face, wearing traditional Vietnamese clothing and a black velvet hat. The woman held her hand, sat her down, and asked for incense offerings, mentioning no one had done so for a long time. Despite feeling like she was conversing with a regular person, she wasn't scared and asked the woman about her name and family. She felt sympathy for the woman, who seemed lonely. The woman couldn't remember much but asked for incense. After waking, she felt genuinely unwell, not just dreaming. She went to the altar in the kitchen and lit incense outside. Her husband noticed her seriousness but didn't ask, waiting for her to explain after the ritual. Standing outside, she prayed to the elderly woman and a young boy she saw in her dreams, promising to offer fruits on certain lunar days and invite them before eating. Since then, she regularly lit incense and offered fruits, continuing to have similar dreams, making it difficult for her to sleep peacefully. At my sister's house, she often tossed and turned, unable to sleep. She thought it might be because she forgot to light incense for the spirits. So, whenever she couldn't sleep, she would go to the front and light a few incense sticks, which helped her sleep normally. That day was the beginning of the Hungry Ghost Month, maybe the first or second. While sleeping, she had a very strange dream. In the dream, she saw the road in front of her house was no longer just a regular road, but resembled a large, long pond. When she woke up, she realized the width of this water body was exactly the same as the road in front of her house. In her dream, she stood on the bank, looking at the water, which wasn't ordinary water, but had a strange orange hue. The water flowed slowly, neither fast nor still like the tide. The sky was neither dawn nor dusk, with a dim orange light reminiscent of clay tiles, creating a somber atmosphere. The scene reminded her of the underworld, similar to a scene where people fry in oil. She thought maybe the sky's light reflected on the water, giving it that dark orange color. Across the water, she saw countless people of all ages gathering, some in groups, some wading into the water, engaging in various activities. This scene convinced her it was a depiction of the underworld. From where she stood, in the middle of her yard, she saw a wide, deep ditch in front of her, which looked frightening. But she wasn't scared because in front of her stood a large pillar like a temple column. Underneath, it was a stone table filled with offerings for the spirits: cakes, sugarcane, fruits, rice, and salt. That day, she and her husband had a fight and weren't speaking, so she was the only one at home to make offerings. Her husband had ridden off somewhere, leaving her alone to offer food to the spirits. She noticed the people across the water were gesturing as if asking for the food she was about to offer. Finally, she decided to push all the food from the stone table into the water. As the food floated away, the water receded until it was all gone. She saw the people from the other side slowly crossing over to her side, seemingly to ask for more food. She observed them more clearly, noticing people of all ages, including elderly, middle-aged, and children. Later, she visited her grandmother until 8 p.m. and then returned home, worried about being late for the offerings. Luckily, she found a fruit shop selling paper money on the way home. She bought boiled sweet potatoes and corn to offer alongside the paper money. After setting up the offerings, she went inside to get a bowl of rice from her mother's house. She intended to invite her husband to join her in making offerings and eating outside. Although she didn't see anything unusual, she felt as if she and her husband were sharing a meal with many people. She sensed the presence of an old woman and a 13 or 14-year-old boy. Despite not being able to explain this feeling, she felt happy, as if many people were joyfully eating with them. Since that experience, she continued to make offerings twice a month, even if just a little, and everything was peaceful until November 2018, when she had another strange dream in that house. At that time, Dalat was experiencing a stormy season, and she had just given birth 2 months prior. One night, a severe storm hit, causing rain to pour from evening until the next morning. The rain was so intense that it was reported to have swept away vehicles and people. Her rented house was old and leaky, and the rainwater overflowed, soaking her mattress, making it too cold and damp to sleep. She stayed up browsing Facebook all night, and around 4 a.m., exhausted, she finally turned off her phone and tried to sleep. In her sleep, she dreamed again, seeing a deep abyss behind her house. There was something down there where people built greenhouses to grow vegetables and strawberries. At night, they lit bright lights. In a dream, I saw 2 snakes crawling up from the abyss. These snakes were about the size of my upper arm, which isn't very big. They were intertwined and crawled straight into my room. One was black, and the other was yellow. The black snake was longer and bigger than the yellow one. The yellow snake wrapped around my leg, while the black one lay beside me without moving. Even now, I can still feel the sensation of the snake wrapping around my leg. It was rough yet smooth, just like a real snake. In my mind, I wasn't scared, I thought it was because of the heavy rain outside. So the snakes came inside to shelter without intending to harm me. I remained still until my aunt appeared. My aunt always advised everyone not to kill snakes if they found them in the house. Instead, they should chase them away or catch them and release them elsewhere. She believed that if snakes traveled in pairs, they were sacred or guardian snakes and shouldn't be harmed. My aunt stood in front of me and asked why I hadn't gotten rid of the snakes, saying they looked scary. She then grabbed a large bag and put the black snake inside. The yellow snake was still wrapped around my leg, so my aunt told me to remove it and put it in the bag. I replied that I didn't want to bow low the snake, meaning I didn't want to bet on the snake's number, as people often do when they see snakes. Later, my husband appeared to help my aunt put the yellow snake in the bag. At that moment, I woke up and realized it was all a dream. I had only napped for about 15 to 20 minutes, yet so much had happened in the dream, making it feel incredibly real. The next day, I secretly checked the lottery numbers to see if the snake numbers appeared, without telling my husband for fear he'd scold me for gambling. My aunt and brother rarely dream, but when they do, the dreams often predict lottery numbers, especially when snakes, dragons, or fire appear. Just as I thought, the lottery numbers 72 and 32 were drawn that day. I remembered I had recently changed my phone number, and the last digits were also 3272. Could it be a coincidence? After confirming the numbers, I finally told my husband about the dream. I regretted not betting on those numbers earlier, as I could have won some money. Despite the shortness of the dream, it left me with many thoughts. I had lived in that house for about 8 months, and in the last month, I had another dream. This dream wasn't related to the house, but to the land next to it. While living there, I had 2 cats. The previous house I rented had high walls, so the cats stayed indoors. This house had a garden, so I let them out to play every morning. They often ventured to the area behind the house and jumped over to the neighboring land. I rarely went there unless I had to retrieve the cats. The land was deserted, surrounded by a short wall and an old B40 wire fence. There were an old guava tree and a poinsettia tree, and the grass grew taller than me due to neglect. One morning, I woke up late because I was tired. My husband had already gone out to water the plants and play with his cars. I assumed he was in the kitchen, so I went there to see what he was doing. In the kitchen, I saw the silhouette of a young man facing the sink, seemingly cleaning. Then, I saw a man's shadow walking straight towards me. Everything was bright, like pure gold. Next to the gold, I saw a pile of bones which I instinctively knew were human finger bones. Shocked, I suddenly woke up, realizing it was another dream. Sitting on the mattress, her husband walked in, and she recounted her recent dream to him. He jokingly suggested, "Let me grab a shovel and dig over there to see if there's any gold. What if the dead are signaling us to dig for treasure?" However, when she remembered the pile of bones, she felt too scared to go back. The weather in Dalat at that time was quite gloomy, and just looking outside made her fearful, so she decided not to return and instead call the cats back home, letting them come back on their own. About a week later, a construction crew came to level the land for a parking lot or something similar. They didn't touch the poinsettia or the guava tree, probably because the land was too steep for their equipment. Seeing the work begin, she considered telling them about her dream, but thought better of it, fearing it might disturb them. Eventually, she moved out of the house, but the plot of land next door continued to intrigue her. She wondered if there might be a body beneath the guava tree. Through her spiritual stories, we can see that not all spiritual encounters are frightening or ominous. Her stories reveal the diverse nature of spirituality. For instance, despite being spiritual, she often found joy in these experiences, like when she offered food to spirits in her rented house and felt happy eating beside the offering. To her, spirituality is intricately connected to everyday life. I wonder if others feel the same way. As our story concludes, don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this story, leave a comment below to let others know. Let's look forward to more exciting stories in the future. Goodbye, everyone.